Oh, I feel like Ellen DeGeneres just now. I was dancing backstage. I wish you all could have been too. I am rising. Are you rising? This is incredible. Now, you remember those civil rights icons who were sitting up here? How many were here when we had the C.T. Vivian, John Lewis, Andrew Young? He said, be disruptive. Now, how many people were disruptive in the last 2 days? How many people were troublemakers? Raise your hand. Come on. I want to see it. Oh, that's not very good. You still got a couple of hours left, and I want to hear where you disrupt, what you disrupt. So today I have a question to ask, and the question is, how much light can emanate from a single spark? And I'm going to answer that question by telling you a story. The story begins in Nairobi, Kenya, where I was a young wife and mother. My husband and I traveled there, and I really didn't know anything about anything, but I talked my way into a job as a journalist. And I told stories about the most creative, active people imaginable. People who were disrupting Kenyan society. They were nation builders. They were amazing. My son came along on these stories came along to tell these stories with me. He was just a kid. And we discovered there were about 5 or 6 words that really describe these people. People like Michael Werekwe, who walked across Kenya to create awareness of rhino problems. People like Sir Michael Wood, who started the Flying Doctor Service in Kenya. People like John and Joan Carmali, who couldn't send their kids to school because they were mixed race, so they actually volunteered to start a school. The words are inspiration. There's always a spark of inspiration that ignites a light in us to explore the possibilities of finding a solution, which we use our imagination to find the solution, so we can take action and arrive at our destination. So I was truly inspired, but Dan was even more inspired. And it was like a little light, a candle, went off in his head. And when there were problems in a country that has no social services, he just volunteered to create something. His first creation was a Operation Operation Save a Heart, which was for a little girl who needed a heart operation. She was a scholarship Kenyan kid. He had wild parties in our backyard, and I couldn't complain because, of course, it was all for a good cause. This particular image is one from his journal that he kept during his life. He kept a load of journals. So the next thing he took on, so he started with an individual. He then moved on to tackle a family. There was a family of Maasai, 7 or 8 kids, deadbeat dad. So Dan took jewelry that the mother had made and sold it to all of our friends. Oh, my goodness me, we're all bedecked with Maasai jewelry. It was almost a form of microfinance all those years ago. Dan, when he was about 19, he took on a community. He heard that there was problems in a refugee camp in Malawi, so he gathered together a group of 15 kids, and they started Student Transport Aid. And he took these kids across Africa, 15 kids in 2 Land Rovers. You can imagine how that went, including Christopher Nolan, who is the Batman director. Ellie Tatum, who's the publisher of the Amsterdam News. Many of you know that is the largest African-American newspaper in the country. Who else? Rocco Bellic, who did the film Happy. If you haven't seen the film Happy, you have to see it. I'm telling you these people because they were all ordinary kids, but they were inspired by what happened on that trip, and they became extraordinary lights in the world. When Dan was 21, he heard about a terrible famine raging in Somalia. But in those days, before mass communication, nobody really knew what was going on. So Dan flew off to Somalia and took photographs of some of the worst cases of thousands of children and mothers and fathers dying. He went back over and over through the next year. His pictures were among the very first to ignite a reaction, Operation Restore Hope, which came and brought relief aid to Somalia. He was doing really, really well, but there was a terrible bombing by UN forces on a house where they suspected the warlord was hiding. And Dan and his friends, other colleagues, ran to the house to take pictures of what had happened. And when they got there, the people were so enraged that they beat and stoned Dan and 3 other journalists to death. So when Dan's friends lit a fire to celebrate, as they said, the sparks Dan had lit in others, I basically knew my life was over. There was no possibility of Dan's light shining ever again, and quite frankly, there was no possibility of my light shining again. I was inspired, ultimately, by the stories of other people who focused to see the light in that darkness. People who transformed pain into something positive, and there is not a person in this audience, I know that, who has not gone through tremendous pain. It may be the loss of a parent or a child. It may be the loss of a spouse or a brother or a sister, an auntie or an uncle. It may be the loss of a dream, a vision, something that you have wanted to do in your life, and right now it doesn't seem possible. But I'm telling you that it is possible to transform that deep pain into something positive, something that can bring light back into your life. It took me a long, long time, but we created a foundation. We created a vision, and I remember one of those icons, I can't remember who it was, but he said, you have to have a vision. So we created a vision of a foundation that would celebrate the concept of creative activism. We made up the name. What's a creative activist? It's somebody who uses the spark inside him to tackle issues in the world around him or her. We can't solve problems of the whole world, but we can tackle things in the world around us, and each and every one of you is a creative activist. You are volunteering your energy to deal with the world around you, and I'm so proud to be here on this stage talking to you. Our foundation has worked with more than 200 projects and productions. We focus on people who are using arts and media, like Lynn Whitfield. Oh my God, that was so moving. So we have a project called, what's it called? I'm so excited. Living on One. Living on One. These kids went off to Guatemala to live on $1 a day and experience what it's like. And they came back and they go around to schools across the country and explain what it feels like to be hungry and don't know where your next 50 cents is coming from. They've created a sort of microfinance program. Look them up on our website and see if you can support them. We have another project which I love, Beyond Right or Wrong. And you remember Kwaku Mandela was sitting up here? Kwaku is part of that project along with Lekha Singh. They traveled the country, Lekha traveled the world to tell stories about forgiveness, how forgiveness can truly transform every aspect of our lives. And believe me, it's a lesson I had to learn. I did a TED Talk on it, and it was a long journey for me to forgive the Somalis who killed my son, and I did. Another project we've got is called A Small Act, and this is one that will resonate with so many of you. How many people here donate money, like, you know, to a child in Africa or India to help them? Are there folks out here who do? Yeah, there are all sorts of you. All right, so Chris Mburu was a starving kid in Kenya. And this lady, Hilda Beck, sent $50 a year, a small act, to this child she didn't know all across Africa. When he grew up and graduated from Harvard Law School, he went back to Sweden to find this woman. He had no idea who had done this small act. And he found this retired nun in Sweden. And he did a film called A Small Act, showing the power of a small act to literally transform a life. And because of this film that he did, he has raised hundreds of thousands of dollars to change the lives of hundreds, maybe thousands, of children across Africa who are now getting an education. We gathered together the lessons we learned from all these people we've studied over the years and shared with, and they're amazing people. Their hearts are as big as all outdoors, but they are ordinary people, but with an extraordinary view of their effect in the world around them, their ability to impact them. They are people like each one of you. You are exactly the creative activists we're talking about. And we've created this toolkit. It's called A Guide to Changing the World Around You. That's Dan, by the way. And it's, oddly enough, what we discovered is it came down to the same principles that I had seen early on with those extraordinary nation builders in Kenya. It's about what inspires you, what makes you want to go on that exploration using your imagination to find a solution and take action. It's no good just standing around saying, "Ooh, I got the idea." Whee. No, it's all about action. And you arrive at your destination, but guess what, guys? It starts all over again. Once you're there, it's going to start all over again, because there are so many challenges in this world. Dan did not set out to be an inspiration. He did not set out to inspire me to create an organization that has maybe helped 200 people, projects, and productions that have touched 100 million people. He did not set out to do anything except listen to that little voice inside his head, that spark of light that illuminated him, that made him radiant. He didn't know he was radiant. He wasn't really radiant. He was messy, and his socks drawer was a disaster. He was an ordinary kid with an extraordinary view of what was possible because he was inspired by others. I'm looking at you, and I see points of light everywhere. I see your inner light. It's shimmering here. It's shiny, it's bright. But I'm telling you that when you go back to your homes, your communities, your towns, your schools, what you do in this world that is the reason you're here and we're so proud to know you, when you go back and you tell stories about the people you met here, about the inspiration, about Lynn, about the icons, you're going to shine that much brighter. And that shiny bit of yours is going to ignite lights in other people, and they're going to start shining brighter. And you're going to tell them what you learned from the icons. You're going to tell them to be disruptive, be troublemakers, have a vision. When you get knocked down, you stand up. You love the hell out of people. Didn't you love that statement? You love the hell out of people, or hell, you love people. And they said, well, the words that I particularly love, it's from Goethe. It's whatever you can do or believe you can do, begin it now. Genius has genius has goodness, power, and magic. Begin it now. And I'm telling you what will happen. What will happen is we will unite the light. We will unite the light in this room. You will be inspiring people to brighten their lights. And this light will literally travel the planet and illuminate the dark places on this earth, the dark places in people's hearts, the hurt spaces that would mean that a child would strap on a bomb and become a suicide bomber. The hurt places that we all have that need inspiration, that need solutions. The hurt places on our planet, the air, the water, the earth. We need solutions. We need inspiration. We need your spark. So my final question is, what is your spark? Thank you.